Right. So what I said we'll be looking at are the four keys that database has. Now, there's the primary key, there's the candidate key, the composite, and the foreign key. Basically, the only two keys that you need to focus on when you are creating your database, when it comes to creating your database, when you're making your tables and you are designing your tables, the only two keys you need to remember about is the primary key and the composite key. The primary key, it basically uses a field. Remember, a field is like a column. So it uses a field or a column to identify the entire row. So if we use this table as an example, the primary key is going to be a unique value that identifies the entire row. So that instead of having to type back, for example, for the student table, instead of having to type back what is the student first name, what is the student last name, what is the student address, what is the student contact, you have an ID basically that's going to identify all of those information inside of that row, so that you can use that ID or that primary key to represent that entire row. So just like how you have a ID number, you would have an ID card, you would have an ID number. That ID card has an ID number to represent you, your identification number. That is a perfect example of a primary key. The government, you don't need to, if somebody wants information about you, you don't need to send them your first name, last name, and all that information. By just having your ID card number, they can get all of those information about you, because the government would keep track of all the rest of information, and it will be connected to that ID card number. So that is the primary key. It's used to identify information related to that one ID. So the field, remember, the field is the column. So you use a field or a column basically as the primary key. So as we input more values going down, more students information, we're going to have more student ID, and all of those will be the primary key. The composite key is basically just the primary key, but it is using two or more fields. So for example, in this table here, we only, basically when you're creating a table, you only need one field as the primary key, because usually you will create a field so that it is unique enough so that it can be used as the primary key. For example, an ID field, like a student ID, a subject ID, and so on. But when you're creating a table, to link those two tables together, like for example, how we're going to link the student ID or the student information with the subject information, how we're going to link those information together into one table. In that case, you cannot use these IDs individually as the primary key. What you have to do is combine them together. And when you combine them together now to make that primary key is now called a composite key. So it's using two or more fields to basically be the primary key. That's why it's called composite. It's made up of two or more fields. So when you're creating your tables, when you're designing your tables, the only two keys you need to focus on is the primary key. You choose one field to make as your primary key, or if you are inside of a table that is basically combining two tables together two fields in a table together, like how I'm combining student ID and subject ID together, in that case, you would combine those fields together to make your composite key. Remember, in each table, you must have a primary key because you need a primary key to represent the information. You don't type back information like how in this table here. You don't type back redundant information in database. You don't type back what's the student first name, what's the last name. You don't type back what's the subject because it's already in a table. You use a field to represent all of that information, and that is the primary key. And since inside of this table here we must have a primary key, and using these fields individually cannot work because the fields will be repeating itself, because we can have multiple students doing the same subjects, and the same subjects are going to be repeating because if you think about it, all of you are doing IT, all of you are doing English A, so all of those subject ID going to repeat itself, and then all of you are doing multiple subjects, so your ID is going to repeat also. So in that case, using it individually would not be a suitable primary key. It's when you combine them together, then you can have a primary key in a table like this here. Are you guys following with the primary key and composite key?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now, the candidate key and the foreign key are just titles. They are just names that represent the key based on where the key is located or how the key is looked at. So most of the time these keys, they're going to come in an exam question. They might ask you this field here, this field name, what kind of key is it? Is it a primary key? Is it a candidate key? Is it a foreign key? So it's for you now to understand the concept of what makes it a candidate key and what makes it a foreign key. That's the only time basically you're going to see or use these keys in an exam-based question. So what is a candidate key? The word candidate means that, can someone get me the definition for the word candidate? Someone Google it quickly.
A person who applies for a job or is nominated for election.
The next definition.
A person taking an examination.
There's another definition.
A person or thing regarded as suitable for or likely to receive a particular fate, treatment, or position.
Good. That's the one we're going to focus on. So a person or thing that is regarded suitable for a position. Remember, we need a primary key in each table. So that primary key is like a position. A field is going to take up the position as primary key. So you can say like the primary key is like the captain of a cricket team. The cricket team has a captain. In the table has a captain. That is the primary key. Now, the candidate key, you can say is like the vice captain. If it has the potential to become a primary key. So, if the captain goes away, he's sick or something happened to the captain, he got injured, then the vice captain can take over. Basically, if anything happened to the primary key, the candidate key can take over. because it has the potential, it is suitable, it can become a primary key because it is also unique. If we look back at this example here of the student table, your passport number, each of you have a passport. On each passport has a unique number. Now in this table here, we are only using the student ID as the primary key. We're not using the passport number. So, because passport number has the potential, it is suitable, it is unique, it can become a primary key. That is why it is considered a candidate. It has the potential. So, just like how a vice captain has the potential to be the captain, just like how if you're running for president, you are a candidate to become a president, it's the same concept with the candidate key. It has the potential to become the primary key. It is also unique. But it is not the primary key. If you think about it, the vice captain is a candidate to be the captain, but he is not the captain. A candidate for the election has the potential to be the president, but he is not the president. So that's the concept you need to visualize, that the candidate key has the potential to be a primary key, but that does not mean it is always a primary key, but it can become a primary key if needed. Now, with that in mind, the student ID can be considered a candidate key because it is a primary key. So basically any field that can become the primary key is a candidate key. It is a candidate to becoming a primary key. You guys think you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright, so the last key is a foreign key. So, foreign, think about you are in Guyana, somebody, your family or relative is living in foreign. In Guyana, we say they're living in foreign. So, imagine that same concept here now. The key, you are the key, all of you are the primary key. Just say all of you are the primary key. Now, if you were to travel to another country, you go into foreign. Hence, if you're outside of the country, in another country, you go into England, you go into America, you are a foreign key. You are here in Guyana, you go into America, you go into England, you are now a foreign key. The student ID is a primary key in this table here. But we send in the student ID to foreign. We sending him to another table. Basically the student subject table. And inside of this table here, it's going to be considered a foreign key because it was being used locally in another table. And that's basically the concept behind the foreign key. You guys think you got that?
Yes.
Anyone still confused on any one of the keys? Primary,
Can you
candidate,
go over this foreign key?
the foreign key? Alright, so the student table. Basically the foreign key, if you look at the definition, it says that in a database where the same field is found in two or more tables, the same field, so the same student ID, the same subject ID, that field, if it is found in two or more tables, if it is a primary key in one table, it is a foreign key in another table. So, if it is in two or more locations, like how we have student ID in this table at the top here, and we have student ID in this table at the bottom here, it's in two locations. One at the top here, one at the bottom. What they're saying, if it is a primary key in one table, it is a primary key in this table, the student table at the top here. If it is a primary key in this table here, then wherever else that primary key is located, it is considered a foreign key. It is foreign. It is not in the same location. It is somewhere different. Did that help, Giselle?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Any one of the keys? Foreign, composite, candidate, primary? Aaron,
Yes, sir.
you following?
Yes, sir.
Alia, where's Alia? Alia, where's your best friend?
Sir, in EDPM.
She does EDPM?
Oh, Janesi. Sir, may no share.
Well, at least we know which one is the real best friend. Alright, so I guess we can move off from primary key. I hope you guys understand the concept.
Asking me, sir.
Yes, Alia?
This is in the textbook, right?
Yes, I gave you guys all of this notes even though in your classroom.
Yes, sir.
I
Okay.
was taken from the textbook. But this is the updated textbook. I think this textbook came out recently. I think it's with 2019 or 18 or 20. I think it's 19. All right. Good. So we're gonna look at the exercise now. Exercise 3 and 4. We're looking at relationships. So we're still at the designing part of our tables. When it comes to our tables, remember the database requires tables. So we create our database, we open access, workshop database. So we open access, we create our tables, all objects on the left hand side, we see all our tables here, and we design our tables by setting the appropriate field name, setting the appropriate data type, setting the appropriate field length, description, properties, and so on. And remember, all of that can be found inside of the design view. So when you open the table, you go to the design view and you see all of those components for the table. So that is how you design your table. Now, setting the field name, data type, description, the field properties, setting the field size, and changing all of these options inside your field properties is all considered a part of designing your table, including setting your primary key. In case you guys forgot, or the table, to set your primary key, you basically select the field in this gray box outside here. This is where you select the entire field. See, the entire field is highlighted with that red rectangle straight across. So selecting that will highlight the field, and you simply select the primary key option at the top here. So if you only select one field, quantity, and you select primary key, only that field will become the primary key. If you want to take it off, simply select the field and deselect primary key. If you want to make two fields a composite key, you need to highlight both of them. Use the control key to highlight both of them, or the shift key, either one. And then you select the primary key, and that would make both of them the primary key. Now, So you set your field name, data type, description, set your properties, um, create your primary key. All of that is a part of designing. Now you can see basically the last step of designing is creating your relationship. When you have multiple tables together, you need to create the relationship to show how these tables are linked to each other so that we can basically get the information from each other. Because if you look at this table here, we have the student table. Each student has an ID, each subject has an ID, but how do we know, or how will database know which student is related to what subject and so on? Yes, you created in the table here, but in order for you to create your queries, your reports, and your forms, you need to show how these information are linked to each other. Basically, you need to link the tables together using a common key, using a common field, so that you can present the information in all of the tables. So we're going to be looking at the exercise 3 as to how we create that relationship. So practical exercise using Microsoft Access, exercise 3, linking tables in the bookshop database. So it says to open the bookshop database that was created in exercise 1 and 2. Locate the database toolbar that contains the relationship icon. So database toolbar is at the top here. So the database toolbar, database tools in the newer version of Access is called. So in the tools, you will see the relationship icon. The relationship icon looks like 3 tables and they have lines linking them to each other. Remember, we need to close anything that we have open first before we can do anything. So anytime you are editing a table, close the other tables. If you are editing a form, a report, a query, a relationship, close everything. Don't have anything open. If you have it open, it will give you an error that you need to close that table or so on. So the relationship icon, you click on relationship. It says to click on the relationship icon, then click on the show table. I have a feeling I did this exercise before. Did I? Yeah, I did. We looked at it last week, Monday.
You may proceed.
So, anyway, we can go it over back again. Click on the relationship icon, then click show table. So I'm going to delete all of my table. I hope you guys are taking note of what I'm doing. If you highlight all of the table like this here, all will be highlighted. You can press the delete key and it will delete all of the tables. So we have this add table option here, which is going to be the show table dialog box. And this is where we can add our tables so that we can create the relationship. So we can double click on customer, notice customer appeared, or we can left click on order and click add at the bottom here and notice the order table appeared. Double click on product and that appeared. Once we have all of our tables, we close and we can create our relationship. To create a relationship, you use similar fields to make your relationship. So notice the order table is basically combining the fields from the customer table and the product tables using those fields. So the order table is what is going to be used to link the customer and the order table together. So you simply click on the customer ID and drop it on the customer ID here, enforce referential integrity, and you click create, and you have your relationship. Same thing with PRID. You click it from here, one table, drop it into the next one. It doesn't matter which direction you click and drag it from, once you drop it on each other. If you selected the wrong field, you could always change it right inside of this box here. So PRID, enforce, and create. If you want to delete, you simply click on it. Notice it got highlighted, the line got deeper, and you press the delete key. It's going to ask you if you want to, yes, and you just deleted the relationship. Tree. That will take some time. Alright, not that. So I'm working on a simple assignment for you guys to work on. You can work on it individually, you can work at it in groups. That's up to you. You guys can decide. So you can come together and work together to create the database. That is fine. I have no problem with that. So the same group you're doing the SB in, you can do it in the same group also. So for those of you who can't remember your groups, Chazelle, Madison, and Bailey, Latrell, Malik, Jonathan, and Brian, Celicia, Sarah, and Jasmine, Jamal, Shamal, and Nicholas, Jeremiah, Daniel, and Kafensi, Durrani, Khadijah, Tatina, and Unique, Keelan, Aaron, and Jamani, Sion, Ali, Janace, and Michaela, Savir, Savitri, Naresh, and Chelsea Juma will be joining that group. And the last group is Robert, Gopal, Mahima, and Hitesh. So if you want to work at it in groups, no problem. So what are you doing for this assignment? You're basically creating a simple database of the students that are in your class, 5S and 5T, 4S and 4T, sorry. And so basically, you are the new clerk of the St. Stanislaus College, and you're required to create a database to manage all the students and subjects of the college. So you're going to start with the students of 4S and 4T. Basically, you can only do those two classes, your class. So what are you doing? You're creating the following tables. Only 3 tables you will be creating. The first table is going to be called the students table, and you are going to have these field names here. You're going to have a field name of student ID, first name, last name, class, gender, date of birth, age, and contact. Second table, you're going to have subjects. So these are your field names for the subject table. You're going to have a subject ID and the subjects column. The third table, you're going to have student subjects. So basically, you're going to create a table, and you're going to have student ID and subject ID to show what student is doing what subject. So for example, if Aaron Prasad has an ID of 0001, you're going to show what subjects Aaron are doing. Subject X so. I'm going to create I should create a format for the IDs for student ID and subject ID. So student, let's see, student ST. We're gonna have ST and 4 numbers. And subject ID, that format is going to be SU. SD and SG 000. 4 numbers after that also. So that's your format for your student ID, and that's your format for your subject ID, and you combine it inside of your student subject table so that we know what subject is doing, what student is doing what subject. So these are some additional requirements. Ensure that you create a suitable primary key for each table. Remember, each table needs a primary key, so ensure they have the appropriate primary key. We can add grade also. So make up a grade of what the student got for that subject. Grade. Anything else? You guys can think of anything else we can add to these tables? Student ID, age, subject. What other information does subject have? Yeah, I think that should be fine. Alright, so ensure each table has a suitable primary key. Create a suitable relationship between the tables. You have 3 tables, so create suitable relationship between all 3. Set appropriate field names for the tables. Remember, there are certain rules you need to follow for the field names, so ensure you set appropriate field names, set appropriate data type, and set appropriate field properties, description, and field properties. Also remember to set appropriate field size. I would have showed you guys about the for some of the field properties. We would have looked at validation text and validation rules. If you want to make use of that, you can do that also. And I think that is about it, because those are the tables we are creating. And later on, when you finish creating this table, I'm going to show you guys how database uses this information to present it as queries, forms, and report. I could actually show you guys let me find somebody's database that I can show you guys with to give you an idea as to how database works. Okay, so in this database we have the customers table, item services table, the orders table. So in the items table we have item ID, item, what's the cost price, markup, selling price, discount, VAT, so on. In the customer table we have information on our customer. What's the customer ID, what's their first name, last name, contact information, address information, and so on. In the order table now, we are linking that information together. We can have an order ID. We can have the date. Notice we have customer ID. We don't have customer first name. We don't have customer last name. We have item ID. We don't have the item name. We have quantity, unit price, amount, and all the rest of information. Now notice, let me see, in this report here, even though inside of the order table we don't have the customer first name, last name, item, and so on, inside of this report we can still use those fields. We can still have the item name. Notice the item name is here, the date the item was ordered. If you look at the order table, only the order table has the date, but yet there is no item name. But yet in this report we can have the item and the date in the same place. Why is that? Because we created suitable primary keys and we created suitable relationships so that we link the tables together, so that in database now, when we are creating our reports, the forms, and the queries, it sees how all of that information is related to each other. So this is what I was talking about. You don't have to type back redundant information. You can use the primary keys to identify the information, and the database, once you set the correct relationship, it links all of those information together. So with your assignment that you have, when you create all of your tables and you create your suitable primary key, your relationships, and so on, you're going to see how you can create your reports, your forms, and your queries so that it can present the information that you want, so that you can see all the information in one place. You can see all the students' information, like the first name, last name, and so on, and what subject they're doing. Even though you didn't type that into one table, you just type in the IDs into one table. So that's basically the power of database. That's how we use database. We type the information in one table, we use another table to link it together, and then we can use queries, forms, and report to present that information in one location. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Good. But you don't have to focus so much about the query, form, and reports as yet, because we didn't cover that as yet. For now, you're just creating your tables, which you guys should have the capability of doing by now. So I'm going to review this assignment and I'm going to post it in Classroom. Work at it in your groups. Don't do it individually. Work at it in your groups. Have your own Google Meet session, your Zoom sessions, and work at it so that all of you can help each other out in terms of designing, planning, and so on. Remember, a database is all about planning. You don't just go about input information first. You don't just start creating student ID, putting in student first name, and so on. You have to design first. So you need to plan how you're creating your tables first, how you're creating your relationships, and then you put in your information. So remember to do all of your designing and planning first, then put in your data. Alright, so Wednesday, we're going to look at this homework here, 8.3. So those who haven't completed it as yet, ensure you completed it for Wednesday. And we're going to start 8.4 on Wednesday. This assignment here, you're going to complete it for next week, Monday. So you get 1 week to complete this assignment here. Alright, if you guys... Yes, Nicholas? We didn't hear that.
I said it's good, sir.
Okay. If you guys don't have any questions on anything we looked at today, that is the end of today's class. Enjoy the rest of the day.
You too, sir.